quick overview, then here's where we're going today. Number one, I don't like PowerPoint. Okay? So you're going to have about 7 words on PowerPoint today. That's it. But I am going to use a PowerPoint to show you some pictures and a few videos. But today, we're going to be talking about partnering for empowerment, 3 things. But before we get to those 3 things, I'm going to give you a little background. But we're going to talk about the mission, the motive, and the method. So when we talk about partnering for empowerment, the mission, we have to understand the mission. Otherwise, we don't know where we're going. I was told this screen may cut out. That's why we have the backup. If we don't know what the mission is, how can we live on mission? But we also need to make sure that we have the right motives when we go and do mission. And then finally, the method. How can we really partner together to empower people? A little bit of my background. I grew up in a family of missions. My grandfather was a jungle missionary pilot. My dad was a businessman who ended up spending a significant time in missions over the course of many years. Many of you have heard the story of my grandfather, Nate Saint, along with Jim Elliott, Roger Darian, Pete Fleming, and Ed McCauley, 5 young men between the ages of 27 and 32 who gave their lives to reach a group of Indians in the Amazon rainforest of Ecuador called the Waodani. Back then they were known as Aucas because nobody had ever gotten close enough to them to find out what they called themselves, which is Waodani. My dad grew up in Ecuador, ended up spending a lot of time out in that tribe. If you're not familiar with End of the Spear, the story, you can pick up a copy of the book in our booth. I'm going to refer to 2 books today. One is End of the Spear, which I just referred to, and The Great Omission. If you haven't read those books, you need to pick up a copy in our booth. We're not selling them, but if you'd like to make a donation, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, pick up the book. As long as you're going to read it, we want you to have a book. So my dad grew up in that environment and ended up getting adopted by the man who killed my grandfather, a man by the name of Minkai. We spent a year when I was in 3rd grade. We lived over in Mali, West Africa, setting up a communications network for Mission Aviation Fellowship, MAF, before they went over and started operations there. But really living down in the jungles, 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, we moved down to live with the Waodani people. It's a whole different thing. Living out in the Amazon when we're used to living in Central Florida. But what it allowed us to do is it allowed us to see missions from a different perspective. It allowed us to see missions from the receiver's point of view. That's something that most of us coming from North America, we don't have the opportunity to ever get in that situation where we see missions being done to us rather than we go and do missions. And I think you'll understand that as we move through today. But it was very interesting. The Waodani themselves, they saw foreigners coming in and doing things for them. When they had dental problems, foreigners would come in and take care of the dental problems. When they had medical issues, foreigners would come in and take care of their medical issues. When there was an emergency, a foreigner would come in and fly them out to the nearby hospital. But the Indians themselves, they said there's 2 problems with that. Number 1 problem, the foreigners only come when it's convenient for them, not when we have a need. Problem number 2, the foreigners only know how to take care of the physical problems. But our people have a bigger problem than a physical problem. They have a spiritual problem. They said, so if you will teach us what only the foreigners know how to do, we will not only help our people with their physical problems, we'll also tell them how God can fix their hearts. You see, a lot of times we go into places in the typical missions world and we try to fix problems. And any of you who are medical, you can go in and take care of a lot more issues in 1 week than you can by training somebody who's going to be a lot slower for a lot longer. But you're there for a week. And what we find is that the line is always longer at the end of the week than it is at the beginning of the week. And so what about the people there? Well, in the jungles, when there were different medical and dental people that came down, people would hear that, and they would come from different jungle communities, and when they got there, the dentist or the doctor were packing up, and they were leaving. And we overheard several of the Indians saying, our teeth hurt worse now because their teeth have been fixed. There's a problem. But the Christ followers in that tribe, about 20 to 25% of the tribe are Christ followers. They said, yeah, the teeth, that's one issue. But there's a bigger issue, it's the heart. So teach us, which they didn't have a concept. They've never been to a dental office. They've never been to a dental school. They don't have the concept. Here in the U.S., if you say, how long does it take you to, from the time you start schooling to the time you're done to be a dentist? It's about 20 years. These are people at that time that had no formal education. But what they saw is they saw a need. They didn't care about they didn't have any idea about the time frame. But they said, we have a problem. And the problem is not being solved by foreigners coming in for a week or a few days. So they said, you teach us. They didn't want to have to be dependent on outsiders. They wanted to be on their own, knowing how to take care of their own people. It's a concept that really started ITEC. It's teaching men to fish rather than catching them fish. If you teach them to fish, they catch fish for a lifetime. If you feed them, they're hungry tomorrow. Now, a little bit about me. This is my family. Now, this was taken at Christmas time last year. And I want to point out, so 6 daughters, yes, you counted them. The one in the black shirt, that's my wife. I am a good salesman, at least in a previous life I have been. That's why I got her to marry me. But I want to point out my now 11-year-old that's in that shirt on the far left. Can you read the words on that shirt? It says, I woke up like this. The bottom line, the bottom word says, flawless. And we also have another daughter living with us now, Tamasia, not by birth, but and then in addition to Tamasia, who is 14, so Stephanie is 17, Haley is 16, Katie and Tamasia are both 14, Natalie is 11, and the twins, Chloe and Lily, they will turn 10 next month. But then in addition to all these women, my niece lives with us 5 nights a week, going to school very close to where we live, and then goes home on the weekend. So if you're counting, that's 9 women so far. And then in the apartment attached to our house, we have a single lady living there. So that's 10 women, and they just got a female dog last week. People often wonder why I travel. Now you know. This is our family. In June, people always ask, and one of the most asked questions I get at GMHC every year is, how's your dad doing? If you see my dad, see if I can get over here. This is my dad right here. For those of you who don't know, 6.5 years ago, he had a spinal cord injury while testing a wing on the back of a Subaru hatchback at the airport where our office is located. The wing came off, hit him in the head. He had 5 vertebrae removed. He's an incomplete quadriplegic today. He still walks, he still drives. On occasion, when he's feeling really good, he flies. In fact, in the movie End of the Spear, he did all the flying. So he's a very, he's forgotten more about flying than I've ever learned, and I am a pilot. But in June, we took our whole family. My wife came to me and said, look, you're doing a Wow Vision trip this summer, and you need to take your family, all of us, on this trip. So then my younger brother, who has 9 kids, number 10 on the way, a little bit crazy for me. We finished that when we had twins, started multiplying rather than adding. I said, I'm done. He heard that we were going. He said, well, maybe we should go too. And then my parents heard that, and they said, well, maybe this is our opportunity to go. We had 10 people from outside of our family go, and then my older brother sent his oldest 2 kids with us as well. So this is our group. This is in front of my grandfather's house down in Shell on the edge of the jungles. Several of the men who were on the beach that day, Dewey, Minkai, and Kimo is not there. He's in the jungles, but a couple of those guys are there with our family. Now, let's talk about the mission. Oh, I need to, sorry, one more picture. I think.
This picture is where? This house is where?
This is my grandfather's house in Shell, Ecuador, on the edge of the jungles. All right, how do I get this to go? Oh, back. There it is. There's my grandparents, and this is at the same house, facing the opposite direction where the hangar was. So they're actually looking, the camera is standing where the house is. Okay? Okay. Well, somebody else can, y'all want to run this? Or run that? There it is. Maybe we'll stop. All right, the mission. I need 4 volunteers. Okay? 1, if you'll come up here, I need you. I need you to push in your chair. No, the other one. The one that you were sitting in. Oh. Sorry, this is not to happen right now. Back. All right. If you will stand, and we need to move those bags out of the way. Caleb, thank you very much. I appreciate your willingness to, if you just stand right where you are. Actually, you know what? We're not going to go that far. You sit down. Sit down. You know, young lady right here. What's your name? Hannah. Hannah? Yes. All right. Hannah, if you would stand up and just go right to the back chair there. What I need you to do is I need you to stand facing this way right here. And then turn around, face that way. And then just put your hands out just like this. Okay. Right there. Yes, in the gray sweatshirt. If you would stand up, face that corner. And then, let's see, with the blue, yes. No, I'm sorry. We need to go up 1 table. Right there in the green. Yes. If you would stand up, face that back corner. Now, what I'm going to get you to do for me, your name is?
Ricardo.
Ricky.
That'll work.
Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to lay out the mission for you, but I want to do it with this illustration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tape is a 300-foot long tape. And we'll see if we can get this twisted around. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to take this and you're going to walk right around, and you're going to face that back corner. And as he comes by you, just grab the tape and hold on to it, and then we're going to pull it around. If it gets on you, I'm sorry. All right, here we go. You ready? And then you can just keep going until the tape is done. You have to turn it around the other way. There you go, just like that. And keep walking. All right. How many people are there in the world today? About 7 billion. We won't get down to the 7 billion, round number. How many of those people, the 7 billion, how many have never heard the name of Jesus?
2 billion. 3 billion.
3 billion. Okay? So 3 billion out of the 7 billion people. Keep going. You're doing great. Now I want you to pay attention to this. 3 billion people have never heard the name of Jesus. This 300-foot long tape is going to represent those 3 billion people. Okay? Now, today in the world, there are approximately 140,000. Now this illustration is from the book, The Great Omission. My dad wrote the book. You can pick it up, but I think this is going to be a very good way to illustrate what we're talking about today. Now, 3 billion people I've never heard. There's 140,000 evangelical foreign missionaries in the world today. 140,000. Now, at any given time, about 25 to 33% of those are on furlough, raising more support, that sort of thing. So, and then some are just plain ineffective. So what we're going to do is we're going to round that number down to 100,000. Okay? So 100,000 evangelical foreign missionaries in the world today. On this scale, where 300 feet represents, you're good? All right, everybody, you can just set that down and have a seat. Yeah, you can move that behind your seat if you can. There you go. Okay. 3 billion people, 100,000 missionaries. On this scale, where 300 feet is 3 billion people, where do we mark? If we were going to mark where those missionaries are, where do we get to? Don't do the math, just give me a number.
The middle clip.
Where?
Just the middle clip.
The middle clip, well that's 0.
I mean,
Okay.
12.
What'd you say?
10 feet.
10 feet.
12.
12 feet?
12.
12 what? Inches or feet?
12. No, inches.
Inches, okay. So we have somewhere between the metal clip and 10 feet. We get to approximately 1/8 of an inch right there. Okay? Are you following me so far? 3 billion people. What we've done is we have this mission effort with 1/8 of an inch. Now let's just say that all 100,000 of those missionaries are real go-getters. They're all about it, they're on mission, and they each reach 500 people. Where do we get to?
500/8 of an inch.
Thank you, Luke. Where do we get to? In feet or inches? Where? Where do we get to? Take a guess. An inch? Okay. Somebody else?
8 inches.
8 inches. Okay. We get to about 5 feet. Right here. Okay? All of our missionaries, foreign missionaries, they each reach 500 people. That's a lot of people. We get to 5 feet. Well, what's the problem? You know what? The Great Commission, it's an impossible task. It's not possible, right? Don't write that down. Is it impossible? Would Jesus really give us a commandment to go if it was an impossible task? We're saying no, but what we've done is we've gotten 5 feet. Now, what is the Great Commission? Make disciples. Okay. Now, I'm going to step on toes, and it's okay, because you know what? If your toes get stepped on, I am sorry, but I leave for Florida tomorrow. You can be mad at me, upset with me, whatever, but I would just say pray about it, okay? What does the typical missions effort look like today? We go and we build a what? A building. We go and we paint a building. We go and we do a medical camp. We go and we do a dental camp. We go and drill water wells. We go and do a VBS. The Great Commission says go and make what? All of our efforts, we get to 5 feet. Because you know what? We're doing God's will our way. What would it look like if we did God's will, God's way? The Great Commission says, go and make disciples. 2 Timothy 3:12 says, 2 Timothy 2:2 says, the things that you have heard from me, commit to faithful men who are willing to teach others also. How many generations do we see in that verse? 4. Paul, Timothy, faithful men, others. Okay? It says, go and make disciples. Now let's just say that these 100,000 missionaries, each discipled 60. They each discipled 60 indigenous Christ followers. And then each of those 60 reached 500. How many would we get to? Do the math, Luke. I know your mind is...
1,008 of an inch.
It comes to 300 feet. Do the math. 3 billion people. If 100,000 missionaries each disciple 60, discipleship takes a lot longer than evangelism. If they each disciple 60 people, and each of those 60 people reach 500, that's 3 billion people. The Great Commission is not impossible. It's just a matter that we need to do God's will, God's way. Does that make sense? That's the mission. That's what we're up against. Now we need to talk about motive. How many of you are affiliated with a nonprofit organization? Raise them up high. It's okay. Don't be ashamed. All right. A lot of us. Who should be getting the credit for our mission efforts? God. Our motivation should be the glory of God. If we go to a country and when we leave, they don't remember who we were or what we done, all they knew is that now their own people had been trained with a skill to meet the physical needs of their own people as a door opener for the gospel. Who gets the glory? God gets the glory. But what do we do in nonprofit world today? What do we do in church? We focus so much in church today about the things where we're different rather than where we're the same. Is it true? Well, this church, they use wine for communion. We can't go there. We're going to this church because they do grape juice. Right? Well, this music style, it's too upbeat for me. So I'm going to go over to this church because the preacher over here, man, he goes way too long. I can't sit for 45 minutes, but this preacher, it's 20 minutes. Right? Now, in churches in North America, there are hills to die on. But Christ-following churches today, 95 to 97% of the time, we're the same. We're the same. We're trying to do God's will, God's way. We're trying to follow Him. We're trying to be obedient to what He's called us to do. But we focus on, and again, there are hills to die on. Jesus is the only way. He is the truth. He is the life. No man comes to the Father other than through Jesus. That's a hill I'm willing to die on. Jesus died, was buried, and rose again. That's a hill I'm willing to die on. By grace, through faith, not of works, that's a hill I'm willing to die on. Once it gets much beyond that, those are hills I'm not willing to die on. In this room, I would bet that we have some fairly conservative, there are people that go to fairly conservative churches. I would also bet that we have people that go to some fairly charismatic churches. And you know what? That's okay. One day, if you look around this room, one day we're going to spend eternity together. Why don't we do that now? Why don't we start putting that into practice now? If we would focus less on where we're different and more on where we're the same, keeping in mind the hills that we're willing to die on, I think we'd find that the world would be attracted to that. There are 4 things that unite us. One God, one Savior, one body, and one mission. And we can add in there one Spirit. Those are things that unite us. Let's focus on what unites rather than what divides. But in nonprofit organizations today, we think that it is our responsibility to take credit for absolutely anything that we can possibly take credit for, so that we can go to our donors and say, look at what we've done. Look at the return on investment that you're getting. And you know what? I would say you're absolutely right if donors are the ones that fund your ministry. If, on the other hand, it's the Lord who provides those funds, then what does it matter if we take credit for everything that we are involved with? If we don't care who gets the credit, there's no limit to what we can accomplish together. And it's hard. But if it really is the Lord who directs His people to fund your ministry, then He will continue to fund it until He needs you to do something else. And if the funds stop coming in, the mission doesn't change. Maybe how we go about the mission might change. Do we have the right motives when we talk about the mission? It needs to be the glory of God, not glory to us. And then the method. The method needs to be empowering. Empowerment. The task is too big for any one of us to do alone. You remember this example. If we try to do this alone, we're not going to meet it. We can't do it. We've tried it so often. The definition of insanity is what? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's time that we start getting on the same page as a church community and start doing God's will, God's way, and doing that together. So empowering. We need to pass the baton. Missions is a relay race, not a marathon. We need to run the first lap. So what does it mean to pass the baton? First, what does it require? First, we need trainers who are willing to teach. Second, we need trainers who are willing to not only teach, but actually hand off the baton, and we need trainees who are willing to accept the baton. And you've seen these relay races, right? They run for a little bit together, right? As they're handing off the baton, it doesn't go to the first runner to stop, hand it off. He stays at full speed. The runner that he's about to hand off to starts slowly but catches up to that speed. They do the handoff, and then the first runner stops, and the second runner goes. And then what do? The same thing happens several times in the race. So it's going to require trainers who are willing to hand off the baton to those that train, trainees who are willing to accept the baton, and it requires the necessary tools and the training systems that are designed for indigenous Christ followers. So if you go to dental school here or you go to medical school here, that looks like it. I mean, it's multiple years, then you have residencies and all of those things. We can't do that on a short-term mission trip. So what do we need to do? We need to boil it down to the basics. We need to figure out tools that they will be able to use in a foreign field so that they can carry on the work when we hand the baton off to them. It also requires the right perspective. It's easy to go for a week and then you're done and you head back home. But when you train, that's long term. Because it may not just be one training trip, it may be a training trip after that to then help them better their skills and further their training. It also requires the right partner. So we need trainees and trainers who are willing to get involved in the race. But it also requires the right partner, because if we go overseas, how do we know that we're training the right people? Caleb, will you stand up? Caleb Rayapati is from India. He has a ministry called Harvest Ministries. Caleb is one of our partners. He's one of our right partners. Why? Because Caleb understands that his people have need. He also understands how debilitating dependency is. See, if we go and we train some of Caleb's pastors, and then every time they need supplies, they call us, you know what we've done? We haven't done the mission. We haven't made disciples. We've just said, okay, you go, but we keep that string tied to us. So we can yank it back, or we can let it out. We trained 10 of Caleb's pastors in 2005 how to extract teeth. Do you know how many times Caleb's pastors have called us to resupply their goods over the last 13 years? 0. None. Caleb, are the pastors doing dental camps every week in the churches?
On their own. Churches turn into dental camps. The chairs sit there and the people come in, not for worship, but for having the teeth fixed. And the resources are mobilized locally.
Did you hear that? You can sit down, Caleb, thank you. We did a Facebook Live interview with Caleb that you can go to our website and you can watch that. Powerful stuff. Because their pastors are doing dental camps every week in the church. And people, including a Hindu priest, came and sat in the chair, was prayed over, the gospel was shared, because they had a hurting tooth. People don't care about what you know until they know that you care. But when they know you care, you have the ability and the opportunity to share truth with them, and they'll listen. You can actually go onto our website, onto our YouTube channel, and watch the video called Those Same Hands. That was taken back in 2005 when my dad, myself, and Minkai from the jungles went with Charlie Vidido, who's the missions pastor here, also a dentist, went and trained 10 of Caleb's pastors how to extract teeth. Now, I do have a video that I'd like to share with you. This, I believe, in his own words, will show you how we go about doing the methodology behind training and equipping. This is a gentleman by the name of Umal. Umal was trained by Empower Approach about 3 years ago in how to do dentistry, how to extract teeth. Bill Griffin was one of the dentists that had gone with Empower. The following year, which was 2017, Bill came with us on a training trip to Kenya with Hope Alive Initiatives. And on that training, he asked if Umal could come to have a second training, but also to help just show the new students, the new trainees, that they could do it. The majority of the people that we train are either pastors or church leaders. So Umal came. Well, then Umal came again this year to Kenya with us, and he actually then had his own chair where students were working. He didn't do any extractions, but he was helping the students as they were. We also had Bill Griffin again and Craig from ITEC. If you want to play that video, this is Umal. Earlier this year, our team went to East Africa where we did trainings in iDent, iFix, iFilm, IC, and iMed. One of our iDent students was a returning student from 3 years ago. This is his story.
My name is Umar Senkubuge. I'm from Uganda, a place called Iganga. I am a medical clinician by profession. I first learned about ITEC about 5 years ago. A friend of mine invited me to come to a conference in Kenya, Nairobi, the Global Health Missions Conference. And so I got to learn about ITEC through Dr. Trina So I got to learn about ITEC, and then I fell in love with ITEC. The first dental training I received was back in 2016. Dr. Bill and Linda from Empower were doing a training up north in Uganda, training people to practice basic dentistry. The training changed my life. So back home at the clinic I used to work, we didn't have dentistry or even the nearby providers. None of them provided dentistry. So during the training we were taught that we could use the skills that we had achieved to spread the gospel, and not only to heal people's physical needs, but to also be an answer to their spiritual needs. And so when we take out someone's tooth, we also preach the gospel and get the opportunity to pray and share the word with these people that we give dental services. In 2017, Dr. Bill was coming back to East Africa with the ITEC team, and we are going to do a training of so many disciplines, including the iDent. And so I came along, and my role on the training was, yes, to be refreshed, but also to kind of give mentorship to the new trainees that were being trained for the first time. Now it's September 2018, and I'm back into East Africa again. I was invited by Dr. Bill on this ITEC training, where they're offering different modules to reach out and spread the gospel. iFilm is training storytellers to spread the gospel through storytelling. iMed is training basic healthcare providers to reach out to people with basic healthcare skills. iFix is trying to train mechanics to best tell their story and spread the gospel. They have IC, which is fixing people's eyes, and they're using that, giving people reading glasses so they can read the gospel and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we also have iDent, whose role is to train people in basic dentistry, and it's been training them for a week in basic extractions, and that I've been a part of, and my role is transitioning from a trainee to a trainer supportive role. And what I'm doing is I'm giving support to Dr. Bill and Dr. Craig from ITEC. I'm helping show the trainees that this is possible. I have been exactly where they were, and I passed the test, and now I'm practicing out there and spreading the gospel of the Lord. And as we are nearing the end of the training, it's fascinating to see how this whole week has been. From the beginning, where people came in with absolutely no idea, with mixed feelings, to now excitingly they are getting to own the concept. And now they see the whole idea of what this is about. And that is not even the thing, because the real life starts really after graduation tomorrow. That's when they go back to their communities to start practicing and putting in practice what they have learned, and for the purpose they have learned it for. So it's amazing, and it's really, 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 really humbling to see the transition from where they came in with no idea, a lot of work they have put in, a lot of work the trainers have put in, to see that really this becomes a reality, to the day after tomorrow when they graduate and they go back to their communities to do exactly what they have been told to do.
Umal's story shows the exciting potential of a training trip. Not only is he continuing his dental ministry, but he has inspired others to follow in his footsteps. Please be in prayer for those 31 students that were trained in East Africa as they apply their skills and have open doors to share the gospel. So, one of the things that ITEC is well known for, that video kind of tells the story, doesn't it? One of the things that ITEC is known for is development of tools. If you stop by our booth, which is all the way in the back corner on the second floor, you can see some of those tools, like our portable dental chair. Something that we designed years ago, and those are being used around the world. But in addition to that, one of the latest ones, and you can see one of the examples in our booth, is our UAV system. That's an unmanned aerial vehicle. In a lot of places in the world where people are needing medicine, a lot of those places are very rural, very remote. And so the UAV is a remote delivery system that's autonomous. You know, the word drone is normally one that we try to stay away from, but you understand what a drone is. What this is a flying wing. So instead of a copter unit, it's a flying wing, about a 6-foot wingspan, that can take a 1-pound package, whether that's an audio Bible to people who have never heard, which is being done behind ISIS lines today, using this delivery system, or whether that's remote delivery of medicine to places where it may take 3 or 4 days to get there by either canoe or trail or vehicle. It may only be 15 miles away. The UAV system, this we actually took down to Ecuador. Willie, that you see right there, and we'll show you the video here in a moment, learned how to do the UAVs, how to program them, how to maintain them. It's all done by GPS and autopilot. You set in the waypoints, it flies the waypoints at the altitudes that you specify, delivers a package to the waypoint via GPS coordinates that you specify, and then it returns home and lands. And it does that all on its own, without any hands-on. So let's watch this short video, and then we'll wrap up and then have a few minutes for questions.
Mi nombre es Willy Almeida. Estamos ahora en un entrenamiento de UAVs, en el ensamblaje, cómo funciona cada parte del UAV, básicamente en condiciones de vuelo en piloto automático. La idea de este proyecto es llevar medicina urgente, ser una especie de ambulancia aérea que sin impedimentos de condiciones climáticas nosotros podamos atender, nosotros podamos ayudar. Los resultados han sido bastante positivos. Hemos estado volando y probando la entrega de los paquetes que estos UAVs entregan. Ha sido muy emocionante saber que hace algunos años este proyecto ya inició en los Estados Unidos y lo han venido desarrollando, llevando principalmente la visión nuestra, que es llevar el Evangelio hacia otros lugares con herramientas innovadoras. Y aquí en Ecuador es un sueño realizándose. Sé que esto va a servir para seguir ayudando, mostrando este amor que Cristo tiene para con nosotros a través de nuestro testimonio, a través de la ayuda que hacemos.
And they use lots and lots of runway. Keep going, just straight. Yeah, nice. Very nice. Oh!
Yeah! Give him 5, my friend.
Very good.
That video was actually made by Henry from Ecuador, an Ecuadorian who works with ITEC Ecuador and is an iFilm instructor. So all of that was made by them down in Ecuador. Now, as we close, first of all, let me just say, ITEC doesn't have all the answers. We don't have this all figured out. In fact, sometimes it seems like we may even have more questions than we have answers. But we are striving to learn and to grow in this area to equip and empower the indigenous church around the world, here and everywhere, to meet their own people's physical needs as a door opener for the gospel. And we partner with organizations like Hope Alive Initiatives, like FAME. Bill, back there is FAME. FAME has a booth downstairs. Empower, they also have a booth downstairs. Teach to Transform, their booth is upstairs. Southeast Christian Church, you're here. Renew World Outreach, maybe you've heard of them. Green Window, Alabaster Ministries, Harvest Ministries, and others who are focused on empowering the church to be the church in their community. So we are the body. We are the church. And what we need to do is, even though there are certain times, there are certain people who get a little bit more recognition. You know, I think of basketball. I used to play basketball. And when Michael Jordan was playing, some of you remember those days, you know, there were 5 players on the court at all times. Always. They didn't get as much recognition as Michael Jordan did. But if Michael Jordan was there by himself, do you know what? He would have lost every game. It takes us working together. It's a team. And again, the mission is to what? It's to make disciples. That's for all of us to do together. Let me ask you this question. What would it look like if the global body of Christ would partner together to empower indigenous Christ followers around the world to make disciples of Jesus in their own communities? People in rural communities, they are the front line. They are the ones, they speak the language, they know the culture, they know the people. They are the best advocates for Christ in their own communities. They can do the basics. They can be the front line. Charlie Vitito told a story about one of the pastors that he had helped train in dentistry. He's like, man, this guy was no good at dentistry. So he did some sterilization. And then a medical team went in. And they said, oh man, he's doing great work. He didn't even have the blood pressure cuff on correctly. He was like upside down and backwards. But you know what? There was a young child who had a high fever, and they went to the witch doctors. And it just wasn't working. This pastor, I believe his name was Michael, he went in. He knew how to take a temperature, took the temperature. It was a very high temperature. He said, look, you need to get into the clinic. They get a motorcycle, load the parent and the child up, take them to the hospital. The child had typhoid. They were able to take care of the issue. This pastor, he didn't know everything, but he knew enough. See, when people give you the opportunity to touch them, you have relationship. There's trust there. And I'm not saying that we go and we train people incorrectly. That's not it at all. We only certify people who are proficient and demonstrate proficiency in whatever module they're learning. So not everybody graduates. Not everybody gets a certificate that says, you know, extractions or IMAD or iFilm or whatever. The issue is they are the best people to show the love of Christ to their own people by meeting felt or physical needs as a door opener for the gospel. We only train mature Christ followers because the issue isn't whether people die with good teeth or bad teeth. It does matter where they go when they die. And we are better together than we are alone. But if together we will work to equip the indigenous church, what we have found is it works. Caleb, does it work? It works. John Spen, does it work? It works. Luke, you were there and it works. But if we do that together, this 300-foot mission, it is possible. But we have to do God's will, God's way. Questions? While you're thinking of your questions, there's maybe every session has told you this, but if you go to that website, medicalmissions.com/events/GMHC18 sessions, you can do a speaker review or whatever. If you're gonna give me a bad review, just forget the website. If you're gonna give me a good review, either way, go to the website and do that. Yes, sir.
In Uganda, I don't know other parts, but if you are not qualified and you are registered with a medical council, you can train, preach, but you can't practice.
Yes.
I don't know in other places.
Very good. Okay, so in Uganda, as in other countries, what about the legalities? What if you get trained, but then the government says, well, you can't practice here? So what we do is that's the importance of partners on the ground. The partner will check out the legalities of the country that they're in, where they're requesting the training to go. They will check that out with the government authorities, or say, look, there are no dentists in this country. We need you to come. Liberia, 4 million people, 3 dentists. Republic of Congo, 5.5 million people, 11 dentists. Now, it doesn't mean if the partner there says, look, we've checked with the government says no, then we don't go. We leave it up to the partner on the ground. If they say, look, there's nothing that says we can, there's nothing that says we can, but we have a need. What Caleb has found, and he's told me in India, is they are welcomed in because government officials have gone in and have observed what they're doing and said, look, you're doing good work. They had them get a medical certificate, so some basic medical training, and then they use that certificate in order to do the dental. They weren't trained by the government in dentistry, but they do good work, and so therefore the government has allowed them in. In Mozambique, we went and we did a training. There was a government nurse who sat in on the training on behalf of the government. A short time after our team left, they came in and said, you can't do this. But some of the people that we trained continued to do it in the bush, and then after about 1.5 years, the government said, you come into the hospital, we want to see you do extractions. They came in, they observed them doing extractions. They said, okay, you do good work. They taught them how to use their autoclaves. We use a pressure pot. You can see it in the booth. They not only did that, they certified them, gave them a government certificate of dentistry, and said, look, you can go to all of our clinics and work, and we will pay for the supplies. It works, but we do need to be careful, and we don't just go. We have to ask.
Yeah, because I've seen that with traditional bus attendants. For them, they give them certificates, maybe
Yes.
even with the extractions.
Yes. So a lot of times the government, I know in Kenya several times, the person for the medical Department of Health, they will come and they'll actually observe the training, or they'll sit in and say, look, thank you for coming. We need this. It's not everywhere. There's some places, Malawi, we went, John and I spoke with the Ministry of Health, and they said, no, they looked through our training curriculum, and they saw the sterilization. They said, oh man, we need that. Because they don't have the same sterilization techniques that we are teaching students. So John ended up becoming Bishop John for that week and did some Bible training. So, another question? Yes.
My question is, when this organization, I don't know about yours, when they go to like third world countries, take Kenya for example, that's where I'm from, the biggest need is not in the big cities like Matere and all those places. It is in the rural areas.
That's right.
What are you guys doing about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the biggest need in most countries is not the urban areas, it's the rural areas. It's the more remote areas. That's where our entire focus is. It's on the remote areas. In an ideal world, what we would have is in Kenya, we had a Kenyan dentist who went with us and participated in the training. So our students can actually, if they run into a problem, they can actually call her and say, hey, here's what I'm going on. And everybody has a smartphone now. They can take a picture, they can even do a video, and they can send it to each other and say, what do we do here? Same thing with medical. If a medical frontline person in a remote area, they know that there's a problem, it's beyond what they may have a contact, another Christian who's a doctor in a bigger city, because the doctors and dentists can't afford to go to the remote areas. They call them and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing, here are the symptoms, here's what I've asked, what other questions do I need to ask, do we need to send them in, what do you think? And then picture this. The person in the remote area who has the illness, they go and they see a Christian who prays for them, who observes them, sends them on and refers them to a Christian doctor or dentist in a bigger city. You know what we have? We have the body of Christ working together. But what we have found in a lot of places, like in India and Ghana, is that the trainees become so proficient, at least in dentistry, that the government dentists, when they run into a problem, oftentimes they send them to the pastors. But good question. Our focus is the remote areas.
What is your funding model? To get the trainers in there, to give them the equipment, do the people on the ground charge fees?
Yes. So on the ground, we encourage, we don't dictate to the church what they're going to do. We encourage them to charge. Normally we've found that an extraction costs about $1 US. That's if they use the maximum amount of anesthesia and both Tylenol and ibuprofen. We found that it comes to about $1. Normally we've also found that they're charging about $2. It's very affordable. People have money. If they have a cell phone, there's no cell phone company that gives minutes away for free. I've never found one. And so they have money. It's just prioritization of their funds. So they can afford that. If you talk to Brother Daniel, they charge. He said, look, people have money. That's not the issue. But maybe they exchange crops, chicken, eggs, corn, whatever it is.
And the pastors, to get the equipment up front, is that a...
We have people that typically fund the capital expenditure of that. Yeah. So it's a one-time capital expenditure. The instruments needed for extractions normally last 20 to 30 years if they're cared for. And then they replace disposable goods, and we try to find those, we try to source them in country, so they're using the stuff that they're going to be able to reproduce and resupply.
What about other dental problems, like root canal?
Yeah, we have not gotten into root canals. Normally when a tooth is to the point where it's painful, it needs to be extracted. We have done some filling and hygiene, cleaning, as well as prosthodontics. Empower has done more of the prosthodontics than we have. But as far as I know, root canals are a little bit beyond. In fact, when John and I were in Madagascar, we went in and saw a guy who does root canals. I'd rather have my tooth extracted than be in that chair. Yes?
I don't want to get too far away from what you were saying, but you said empowering people to make disciples in their own community, which is awesome. Do you have a way of, I guess what I'm getting at is, we need that to happen among our churches here, in our own communities. Is there something that you guys do or recommend to kind of I work with college students a lot, to get that mindset in them back to making disciples as being a way of life?
Yeah, one of the things that we found, my colleague and I, Jim, good friend of mine, we spent about a year and a half developing a curriculum for the church here. And it was called Life Coaching. Now it's the Life Study. If you grab one of our brochures, it's on our website. It's called the Life Study. Life stands for living intentionally, focusing eternally. But we realized that when we looked inside the church and we looked at the world, there's no difference. The same problems that the world has, financially, career-wise, in their family life, divorce rates, and all those things, the church and the world look identical. So we're told to be a light. And if we're no different than the world, why is the world going to want what we have? So the Life Study helps people. It's a 9-part DVD and workbook that starts that process of how are we living intentionally in today in all 7 areas of life while focusing on eternity. And that begins that process. From there, there's a lot of different resources that we recommend that kind of help people find what they're gifted to do, etc. So, all right. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, I will get you a card.